Thank you, Caroline, and good morning, everyone. The last time I was standing here, it was a very proud moment. It was to watch my daughter in Scotland's youth choir, which was absolutely fabulous. It's a great venue to be in, and I'm delighted to have been asked by Caroline. And thank you very much for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be amongst so many passionate advocates for Scotland's rural economy and agritourism sectors. I represent the constituency of Ettrick, Roxburgh and Berwickshire. It's been a lovely drive, a little frosty up this morning, but wonderful scenery as always in Perthshire. I would have to say that Ettrick, Roxburgh and Berwickshire has a slight edge on Perthshire, but that's my prerogative. I was brought up on a family farm, as you can tell from my accent, which maybe I should sort of go into a bit of Welsh really, but I'm actually Welsh, but I don't sound it. So I was brought up on the Welsh borders, and my father and brother farmed there. My brother's a hugely keen farmer. He changed the farming enterprise from when I grew up, which was a mixed enterprise, livestock and a little bit of arable. It's just a small tenant farm. They've now have 350 dairy cows, and that was after a change in policy from my brother, who was passionate about dairy cows. So he's got 3 sons, and therefore I took on the rural portfolio in the Parliament as the opposition spokesperson. But now I'm deputy leader. I haven't got much time, but I'm here to talk about you and how we see the future of your sector in the economy. As you know, agritourism contributes 60 million annually to Scotland's rural economy, and that's more than just a statistic. It represents jobs created, it represents farms diversified and rural communities sustained. And a shout out to Caroline for securing the next bid to host the World Agritourism National Strategy Conference here in Scotland. I think that's going to be a fantastic opportunity for each and every one of you. But we've heard, from a lot younger people than me this morning, and we know that for many young people, agritourism offers a reason to stay in the places that they grew up, to innovate and to invest in the countryside that they absolutely love. And without it, the pull of the cities or other sectors becomes harder to resist. And that's what we're trying to achieve, really, to make it a parity between cities and rural areas. The work of organisations such as Scottish Agritourism is central to this success by guiding farmers and landowners who want to combine agriculture and tourism. You're not only fostering these new ideas, but you're building a resilient local community. However, we do know that the landscape is challenging. Recent announcements by the new UK Labour government have left many of us in this room a little bit worried. Changes to inheritance tax set to take effect in April will only make it harder for family farms to pass from one generation to the next, with only the first 1 million of assets exempt and a 20% tax rate applying beyond that. The financial strain and the worry of that is significant. And we must ensure that these policies don't jeopardise the heart of Scotland's rural life. Our family farms are so important. And the other challenges are the loss of ring-fence funding, which will come in force in 2025 and 26. This is another concern. It means that Scotland's share of agricultural funding as part of the whole of the United Kingdom will come through what we call the Barnett formula, and that will leave us at the mercy of competing budget priorities. So it depends on what the government decide is their budget priority. Do they prioritise rural areas? Do they prioritise agritourism and the rural economy? And our farmers and anyone who diversifies deserves certainty and stability, not the threat of dwindling resources, which will ultimately be divided between other priorities such as education and health. And despite these challenges, agritourism is thriving. We know that. The numbers speak for themselves. When I read these statistics, I'm really, really pleased because it shows how hard you are working to drive the sector. 41% of agritourism businesses were launched between 2010 and 2019, and 30% more between 2020 and 2022. These are amazing stats of which you should be immensely proud. Behind these figures are stories of vision and hard work. I caught the talk from the Black family, and you saw the emotion that was shown within that speech, because if you have been part of one of these businesses, you know how hard it is and how proud you are to have got through those hard times. But clearly, having listened to the panel, it's absolutely worth it. So well done, everybody. In the past few months, I've taken time to visit local agritourism businesses in my own constituency in the Borders. The first was to the Lee family at the Sandy Stones Treehouse in Jedburgh. It's absolutely breathtaking and just a labour of passion from the Lee family, of which they were all very proud. You saw Lynn from Beer Hope Alpacas. I was so glad I could say that. And she was just chairing the last panel. Lynn, again, changed her career to create this wonderful experiential tourism destination. We went to Brecon Farm Trailers. That's a new operation operated by Lucy Tile near Jedburgh. Absolutely fantastic. And what Lucy's trying to do is what many of you will be trying to do, is connect people from urban areas to the countryside, to give them that experience and to let them understand the daily goings on a farm, and to create that link between our land and our food, which is so important. And I think that the march tomorrow will hopefully demonstrate that connection, that march in London, where people understand, people wider than us in this room will be able to understand how important family farms are to the future of food security in this country. I also went to, I'm going to be called out because I've not mentioned everyone, but the Wilsons at Cowbog, they've been demonstrating that agritourism can be a fantastic diversification to their normal farming activities. And also, there was someone else I had to mention. I know the McTaggarts at Hall Rule, absolutely fantastic new enterprise where there's an off-grid holiday house, and they're just building a new one. So there's a shout out for a few of my constituents there. Again, well done. But these successes remind us that with the right support, agritourism businesses can grow and they can inspire others. And I hope many people today are inspired in this room by the success stories of others. So really, I don't want to highlight too much about the challenges, but there are barriers. And I know that because I've been an MSP now for a number of years, and holding the spokesperson role in agriculture, I really understood where the barriers lay. And first of all, only 61% of Scotland's farmers are under 35. I think that's quite an unbelievable statistic. There are time and resource, costs and knowledge gaps, and they all hinder those looking to enter this fabulous space. And I think it's why programs like the Young Farmer Startup Grant must be expanded and not restricted. There was just 33% of an acceptance rate to that particular grant, and the budget was exhausted by 2017. There was a high demand and insufficient support to be able to access that grant. I think it's important that politicians like me understand how difficult it is to apply for grants set up by those who don't necessarily understand a sector or an industry. They're poorly designed schemes. They're not fit for purpose. And I think we need to be calling those out. In the Conservative manifesto that we brought forward last year, I was really proud of it because it was separate to the main manifesto. And one of those bold plans was to address the lack of access to grant funding to young people. And that was to set up 500 grants of £100,000 each for farmers under 41. And that was born from listening to Caroline and her agritourism group who came to visit us in the Parliament, which you must keep doing, Caroline, because it really highlights and allows the young people to speak directly to politicians. So well done for that. We want to see an enhanced rural infrastructure in terms of broadband, and we called for an extra £1 billion funding for farming across the UK to take into account of the inflationary pressures that we've seen. They're investments, they're not expenses. We should be seeing it as an investment in terms of government investment, because government investment in people like you will ensure that our rural sector is future-proofed and sustainable and resilient. In the long term, they do strengthen rural communities, but we also need practical measures. I was listening to the young people who were talking about extending permitted development rights, and we know it's a very simple thing to do. I even had the support of Fergus Ewing from the SNP to be able to do that, because it allows certain building works to go ahead without too much red tape and distraction. Simple, clear processes are absolutely crucial to support rural businesses to adapt and to expand the offerings that you're already giving us. At the same time, short-term let regulations, which I rallied and fought desperately against, they are a problem as well. They're a growing concern, and with housing shortages, which must be addressed, the Scottish Government's heavy-handed licensing scheme is placing unnecessary pressure on self-catering businesses and platforms that you operate under. We argued for a pause to give the sector time to adjust, but our calls were ignored. And now what we want to see is a fairer playing field across the whole of Scotland, which would make sure that local authorities are not impeding people from getting those short-term let licenses, or indeed costing them too much money to be able to get those licenses. We will continue to push for a fairer and more balanced approach, one that respects the needs of rural tourism whilst addressing housing issues. The legislation that we must look out for, and I'm sure most of you in the room will know about this, but it is the Land Reform Bill, and also changes to short-term letting rules. We don't want to see too many goalposts changed yet again, just for the sake of it. We don't want to stifle innovation, and we don't want to make people in this room less competitive. It's tough enough as it is. The availability of land is a problem, and it is also impeding young people getting access to setting up businesses. I think what we should do is we should push for policies that support not only farmers and landowners, but a broader rural ecosystem. So where do we go from here? First, we've got to champion agritourism as a force for good. If marching in London makes our case, if standing in protest at a local mart, such as Stirling, makes our case, I think we should do it. If coming to Parliament with Caroline Miller and being a voice and speaking to politicians makes our case, let's do it. Let's get more people in the Parliament. We need to keep our rural communities alive and vibrant, and we need to use the power of this movement, of these people in the room, to champion young people and future succession and the future viability of any land-related economy. Farming enterprises should not be held back. They should not be held back by layers of administration, by red tape, by bureaucracy. The decision makers must understand where you're coming from. We must address funding and legislative gaps, but let's work together to ensure the support is there for both those who are established businesses and those who want to come into the agritourism sector. And finally, one of the themes of my contribution today has been very much young people. I've noticed when I've been speaking to the agritourism sector that it is full of young, enthusiastic people. And we must protect that next generation. Young people are the future of our rural economy, and agritourism offers them an exciting path forward in that diversification. We have a wonderful opportunity to showcase the diversity and growth of Scotland's agritourism sector on the world stage when we host the conference next year, Caroline. But thank you to the work that you do every day to make our economy stronger, to make our rural economy resilient, and together I think we can thrive, and our rural economy will be in a good shape if we continue to support this sector. I look forward to a bright future, and thank you for listening.